month's panel discussion will be moderated by Janique Bird, practicing professionals Dr. David Acey, T.M. Garrett, LaTanya Blankenship, and pre-professionals Lydia Warren, Abraham Williamson, and Montez Reed.
We will begin the next segment with some Q&A. If you have a question, I would kindly ask that you walk to my left to the microphone and ask your question to the panelists. You can direct it to either a particular panel member or the entire panel.
My question is dealing with financial aid. I work for a nonprofit, and basically our mission is to not only help students navigate the college admissions process, but support them to college graduation. So financial aid is a big hurdle that we have to overcome with our students. However, in 2018, there are so many resources for them. And so my question is for Dr. Acey. What did funding for your college education look like in 1956 when you were at Lemoyne and then transitioned to Memphis State?
As I mentioned earlier, I went on an athletic scholarship to Lemoyne, so I wasn't out a lot of expenses, just bus fare from Orange Mountain to the school, and the books, you know, I had to purchase the books, et cetera, et cetera. But when I got out of the Army, I went on a GI Bill, at the GI Bill for soldiers, and I utilized that financial aid. What we did at Memphis State, I organized a group of students. Then they wasn't changing books every semester for every course. So our seniors would have to give their books to the juniors to the sophomore. Down, we didn't have to buy books. And then we had a study group. Anyway, but it was pretty rough. The financial aid came from my GI Bill, paid to tuition. That was how I got through. And I didn't have a lot of clothes. I wasn't worried about clothes. I wasn't worried about how I looked. I was trying to get something in my head. I wore my one dashiki too and washed them. I didn't care. My big afro nappy, I didn't care. I just needed to concentrate, keep your eyes on the prize, if you will. So that was the big difference then and no different now. You know.
Okay. And for Mr. Reed, you said it came down to money was your ultimate decision for Rhodes. And you really, really wanted to go to Morehouse. Any regrets?
On school choice, sometimes I look at the people around me, and I wish that more of the people around me looked like me. That is a constant thing in my head I do think about. But on the other end, as I said, Rhodes' name in the long run for me, because I want to work and I want to plant myself in this, I want to make sure Memphis is flourishing while I'm flourishing. Rhodes, like I said, will open a lot of doors to me just by his name by itself. Like the amount of weight that a college or university really comes to their name. Like when we say what is the best college in the world, we say a Harvard or a DePaul or Princeton, is just the name carrying them. Like that's what people, when they read your application, they see the name that you of the school that you went to. So in the long run, Rhodes will help me. In the short run, I do regret the interactions that I have to have on a daily basis with certain people in the Rhodes community that I know I would not have if I went to Morehouse.
Okay.
And the incidents that happened on Rhodes, some of those incidents would not be happening if I went to the HBCU.
Thank you for your question.
So mine isn't as much a question. Ms. Warren and I had a wonderful sidebar because I flinched at her suggestion that Massachusetts was this bastion of progressiveness. And as I told her, racism has a different inflection and iteration. The year that I moved to New York, the white folks in Bensonhurst ran Michael Griffith out onto the Belt Parkway, a black dude, where he got run over. I find Boston to be one of the most stunningly segregated places in the world that I have ever been. And so because this is recorded, I didn't really want to ask a question. I wanted to say that for somebody, some kid perhaps who is listening and walks off with the impression. And I get her point, because she, you know, grew up in this sort of, this refuge of people who were well-intended. But that's not the Massachusetts in the history books or necessarily in the present. And I just wanted to add that.
And yeah, Massachusetts is not like sunshine and roses and everyone's equal, but my experience where I was living in Virginia was just like, oh, like, this ain't right either, but this is way not right. And that was, personal experience is everything. So yeah, but I think like, just to underscore, personal experience and discussion is like, what else is there? That's what we need to be doing about everything. Thank you. Thank you.
We have any more questions from our audience?
I am LaShondra Richmond. Clearly, I wear my name on my shirt just in case I forget. So I am actually a proud graduate of the Tennessee State University. Woo woo! Class of '06, I believe. And then I got my graduate degrees from the University of Memphis. But of course, the grad experience is nothing like undergrad, because you just go to class and leave. My question becomes, when we hear the conversation around financial aid packages, the argument between PWIs and HBCUs, and it can be argued that, if you're a scholar or if you're an athlete, you may get a larger package at a PWI, just depending upon, right, where you're at. And in the case of Mr. Reed, where you have a family who realizes their struggle up front, like, look, no matter what, this is where you go. The reality of it is we're not having these kind of conversations with students. We're talking more so around just financial aid, making sure your scores match. And we're sometimes even talking about relationship and the ability of knowing if this is a good fit. But we're really not talking about the significance that this conversation plays when we're helping students decide their what's next. So, in a given space, in an ideal space, if this room were filled with high school students who are trying to make up their mind, what would each of you all's message be, or one-liners, or thesis statements be to these students, where we all agree that despite 50s or 60s or 2018, there are some paralleling narratives, and despite the very large packages that some of our students may be awarded by some of these schools, we cannot dismiss what is still a very real narrative for students, whether they matriculate left or whether they matriculate right. We're seeing just in this moment this evening that there are still some similarities, and then you have wonderful institutions like Rose College who polishing theirs and sweeping theirs. Like, I mean, what would you guys share to students in helping them, and how significant is this part of the conversation, even if their school is offering you the most extensive package?
I would like to speak on that. By me working at a high school, now that we have the 2 years junior college, a lot of our kids are not ready for a 4-year institution, just being real. Take that 2 years, get that free education, and then from there, if you want to get your associate, do that. And if you want to go to a 4-year, then you already have hours as a junior going into a sophomore going into your junior year. That's why I tell most of my students at Melrose High, where I am an alumni of Melrose.
Yeah, I work with Ms. Blankenship on getting our students ready, trying to get them ready at Melrose. We pay for a lot of tutoring, et cetera, trying to bring the grade level up. But regardless of where they go, if I could leave them bits of information with the time, you have to become academically excellent and socially responsible. You can't have one of them. You got to have this unique combination of quality. You can be academically excellent and socially irresponsible. So what are you doing with education? What is education supposed to do for you? It's a liberatory, emancipatory force that compels you to do better. So you have to have this combination and be determined to finish. I mean, you can be in jail, but jail don't have to be in you. You can be in prison, but in the ghetto don't have to be in you. You got to get the mindset. And if I could quickly just say this, problem we're facing in our community today in the education system, you have to go back to slavery. It was against the law to teach a slave to read and write, right? Mm-hmm. So why do you think they did it? Because we would never grow into being the people we are. Slavery cut us off from our history. You have to know that. Our people don't want to talk about slavery. Mm-hmm. Jews talk about their stuff all the time. And you ever wonder why? so it'll never happen again. Slavery cut us off from our history and our culture. And we are carbon copies of white people. You just got a black face and a white mind. Can I get a witness? You won't, but you just got a black face and a white mind because everything you learn comes from somebody else's perspective, a white person. What can be learned, what is truth, comes from them. African American studies try to reverse that, to get you back into your right mind. Once you get back into your Africana mind, young man from Howard, John Henry Clark, Thurgood Marshall came from that school. You have to know this and know what they were doing to become the first everything. So my point is, you got to get back into your right mind. You got to teach your kid about African history, about African culture. Because if you practice somebody else's heroes and holidays more than you do your own, you lose the faith in yourself and you put it in somebody else. So that's why they don't want us to know Columbus discovered America. How are you going to discover something somebody already here? Go to your house and discover that Lexus or something. Then run the flag up talking about, look what I did. You can't do that. We got to get people back into our culture. Culture is what water is to a fish. If you take a fish out of water, what happens to it? It will die.
It dies.
You take a people out to culture, what happens to the people? They'll die. We've died culturally, spiritually, and everybody. So we're just trying to measure up to white people. I'm sorry about it. So you got to get their education and yours. Then you can walk on water. So that's really, it's important to dress Africa with something African on. Be African one day out the year. We all in French provincial furniture, everything white. We won't look like them, act like them. But you're losing your sense of self. That's why the Jewish people have festivals. That's why Italian people have festivals. That's why the Greeks have to recreate themselves. That's why we started African April. Hopefully, our people will get into that history and recreate themselves. The experience of one generation become the history of the next generation. Several histories become the tradition of the people. Y'all follow me? So we like a freshwater fish been put in salt water. You put a freshwater fish in salt water, it can't swim right. He's agitated, he can't get his balance. There's something wrong. Take that freshwater fish out of salt water, put him back in the fresh water. His skin color come back, he's agile. You got to get into your African self so we can recreate ourselves and understand our history and culture, not putting anybody else's down, but know about it. So that's what we have to do, in my opinion.
Well, I think you made a good point saying getting your own mind back and also be the first one to do something. And a lot of African American kids don't do that because they think they're not good enough. And that's planted actually by the white system. That's what it is for years and years. You're not good enough because your name is not Cody, it's Larico.
Right.
And there's a lot of racial profiling.
Right.
Kids are afraid to send off their resume to get a job because they know my name is Larico, not Cody. And the job recruiter or whatever, he will not even open the resume, even though you would be more qualified for the job. You would be more reliable, but there's so much racial profiling and just telling you're not good enough just because of the color of your skin. And I think that was a good point.
I mean, I think what Dr. AC said is spot on. I don't have anything to add there. I think in addition to Africana studies, I might add to just go a little more directly to your point about finances, because college definitely gives you a boost, but it's not a panacea. You go to college expecting them to give you all the answers, all the jobs, all the internships. And I think the biggest thing that we can do is to, like Dr. AC said, get what we get from there, but also go back into our community, start developing some entrepreneurial skills, or even go to family to see how they can support us, because that's what the dominant society is doing. That's where they get their jobs. Right. They're not dependent on the career services office. They're going to their parents or their community. And even if we don't have those jobs, we still have the knowledge and the ability to build some type of energy around these students to, even if whether you're selling, candy or sneakers, something where you're not depending on the university to finance your mind and education.
Right. If I could talk to high schoolers, what I tell soul school students when I go back and talk or in advisory meetings is, what is best for you. Your counselor, your guidance counselor will help you decide what that is, but you know what is best for you. And for example, I will use the Soulsville case. We are known for 100% acceptance rate to four-year colleges 4 university. That is great. But what we do not talk about is the retention rate of those colleges. A lot of our students, most of our valedictorian, not trying to put her down anything, is not in college right now. Even though she was the top of our class, she was literally the top of our class. But because the guidance counselors pushed her down a road that they thought was best for her, she ended up listening to them because that is what we're told. So to listen to these people because they are the experts and they know what to do. But in actuality, a 4-year university is not for everybody. As someone said down there, you know what is best. There are other options where you don't have to feel as though this is my only route. You go to a 4-year if you're ready for that, a 2-year ready for that if you're ready for that. Technical school if you want to do that. If you want to go to work right after school, that's what's best for you. But you know what's best for you, and your counselors, they'll aid you in that process. But when it boils down to it, your counselor is not the one that's about to step foot on a college campus if you are going to college. That is something that I wish guidance counselors would realize when they are pushing these thoughts down students' head, is that I know what's best for you. I've done the research, and you fit you fit at this school. But in actuality, there are a lot of unexpected things that people have to deal with that your college counselor did not tell you about. Also, another thing is you have to look at when you go choosing a school. If you go to school, you have to look at different things that you did not think about. For instance, when I chose Rhodes, I did not think about all the unexpected things that I run into, such as the incidents that I talked about. A learning curve that I was not prepared for, such as prioritizing things, posturing, these silent skills that my peers were taught right off the bat in high school too. And something I had to learn because I was at a learning curve. Something such as posture can make or break your job too if you're in an interview. Not looking someone in the eye. So these soft skills that I was not taught at SOs that I had to learn, but my peers already had this knowledge, so they're already above me in that instance. So as I said, college is not for everybody, but that is what people are really pushing for, and that is the job market. You basically need a bachelor's degree, but everybody is not meant for a 4-year university. So at the end of the day, your counselors are experts and they know the research, but at the end of the day, your counselors are not the ones stepping foot on these college campuses or where you are going in your next path. So, be prepared for that. That's something I would say possibly.
Great advice. Great.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Agnolia Bigay. I am a 21-year educator with Little Rock School District. And first, I just want to say thank you to the Withers staff for understanding the importance and the need to have these types of conversations. And thank you for the invitation, Angela, to allow me to get here to be in front of this awesome panel. So really, I'm standing there and you are saying everything that I want to say. I was going to just sit down, but there were some comments that were made. When I was in high school a few years ago, my counselor told me that Arkansas State was the best place for me. I was a first generation. My mother couldn't give me the information that I needed. And so not only do students need to have individuals like you to reach out to them, and I've invited AJ to my classroom to talk to my students. I think it's important that we are intentional about going back to those schools, not just by yourself. You got some buddies, you got some individuals, you got a circle of people that are important that need to go into those schools, especially the high schools, and you don't wait until they seniors to start talking to them. And their parents. You just said, my mama told me that we got to go where the money is, and that is so important that we need to start talking to our parents too. And so, how many of us have the time to actually go into the classroom? How many of us are, and not just the people on the panel, because we got some individuals that didn't make it to the panel, that are capable of sharing some really wonderful information with today's students. And for 21 years, I've been engaging with students, diverse students. I'm from Central High School 15 years. And I'm telling you, you got some teachers that are giving them what they need, they're giving them their nurturing, et cetera, and you got some teachers that are just pushing them through. And so, as you sit here and we talk about this information, and I'm asking, so how do we get this information to the kids in the schools? And how do we get this information to the parents? And how many of us will intentionally take the time out of our busy schedule, slow down for a minute because we know what we did not get, and walk up into a classroom, even if it's a teacher that you know, maybe it's a parent of, somebody that's in your family that you know who's in the education. How many of us will do that, And how many of us will take the time to do that? And do you feel that that's important enough to do? And I would say yes. And I'd just like for you to just kind of rebut, how that factors into your schedule, even as a college student when you're home on Christmas break, etc. And again, thank you so much for everything that you've shared tonight.